Getting off the hot girl hamster wheel with Gatti Tassin. Welcome to Frugal Friends. My name is Jen.
My name is Jill.
And today we are talking with Money with Gatti Tassin, about getting off the hot girl hamster wheel.
In this episode, you will learn about the industries that profit from our insecurities, how to navigate negotiations as a female, and how to do a hot girl detox with your budget.
But first, this episode is brought to you by our annual finance planner. We released a budget a few months ago and saw that it was going to be way too big if we included all of the tabs we wanted to include. So we made a separate finance planner for your whole year. So planning out the activities you want to do with your family, the activities you want to do with self-care, your travel rewards, credit cards, all of their benefits, just planning all of the things for your finances in one spreadsheet with like 20 different tabs. So if you want to check out all the tabs that are available, frugalfriendspodcast.com/planner, and it could be really beneficial to you. I know it has been for me, maybe even more than the budget because I use an app, but some people love their spreadsheets.
And this will be especially helpful for you after you listen to our conversation with Gatti. Let's get into it.
So for those of you who don't know Gatti, she is the voice of Money with Gatti, and she's the author of Rich Girl Nation. Her work focuses on the intersection where our economic, political, and cultural context meets the practical money advice that everyone needs to thrive. And that's a long-winded way to say she has a really cool podcast. I really like following her on social media, and I really like listening to her long-form podcast content. And I don't listen to a lot of podcasts. I know that might sound hypocritical, but I don't. But I really do love hers. So I'm really excited to introduce you to her. If you've never heard her before, you're going to love her. Here she is.
Gatti, welcome to Frugal Friends. We are so excited to have you and talk about your book that I am very excited to read.
Oh, thank you. I'm really excited to be here. So thanks for having me.
We're fangirling. This is fun for us, fun for our audience. And you've got some really great things that you talk about in your book that's coming out. And one of the things that stood out to me that I'm curious to get your perspective on is a hot girl detox. This sounds really fun. In the budget, can you tell us about it?
Yes. So the Hot Girl Detox is a conceptual offshoot from the Hot Girl Hamster Wheel, which is the phrase that I came up with to describe just the absolute litany of recurring expenses that are necessary to uphold what I call the capital A, capital F, acceptable feminine experience or appearance. So I call it a hamster wheel because the nature of these purchases is such that many of them are things you can't really just do once. Like every single dollar that you spend is a commitment to spending more in the future. So I experienced this firsthand when I was in my early 20s and I was getting serious about my finances for the first time. And as you all know, the first thing that you do when you want to get better with money is you have to sit down, you have to do an audit, you have to understand where is my money going. And I had been warned by all of the male personal finance gurus that I was following and listening to every day that, oh, housing is a big problem for most people. Transportation is a big problem for most people. You're going to have to watch your restaurant spending. So I go in expecting to find high expenses or high percentages in those areas. And that is not what I found. I lived with a roommate in an old building. I had a car that was pretty reasonably priced and within my means. And my restaurant spending was pretty average, but there was a section that really jumped out at me when I did this audit, and it was my personal care and beauty expenses. So I sit down and I start punching the numbers in the calculator on my phone, and I'm like, that can't be right. There's no way that that's right. And then I rerun all the numbers again, and it was like, oh, nope, that is correct. I am spending over $300 a month on beauty on average. Now, at the time, this represented almost 10% of my take-home pay. So I had this horrifying realization that I was working for almost an entire month every year just to be pretty, basically. And I essentially realized at the time, this is not going to work. I can't keep doing this. So I did the Hot Girl Detox. And now, if somebody listening at home wants to do a Hot Girl Detox, basically the steps that you take are you sit down, you list every single beauty or personal care expense that you have, you power rank them. So you're going to go, okay, this is the most important thing to me. It's number one, all the way down to like the nice to haves. And then little by little, one by one, starting at the bottom, you are going to pull them out of the budget and you're going to pull them off the calendar. And I bet what you will find is what I found. And that is that you are probably going to do this to try to get money back, but what you're going to find is that you're going to get a lot of time back too. And that in some ways can be just as valuable. So now, 5 to 7 years later, I have introduced a couple of the things back. I mean, I will still get my hair cut and still get highlights sometimes, or, every once in a while have to buy skincare or new mascara. But even now that I can afford those things, I didn't add them back in because doing that detox and experimenting with my spending in that way taught me that even though I thought I valued those things, I really didn't. And my life wasn't any poorer without them.
It's such a helpful thing to highlight because, yeah, we do have these bigger expenses. We talk about the big three all the time, but these other kind of almost subscription based, even if we're not actually subscribed to a nail
That's a
salon or a hair
really good
salon.
analogy, actually.
But so much, I love how you've described we are signed up for these things and kind of enslaved to them. But I'm curious how you saw this impacting then just like view of self, because that could
Mm.
feel really scary for someone to be like, am I giving up this 15-step process skin routine? Am I really gonna not get my eyebrows done? Like,
Mhm.
what then happens? Have you found any replacements? Or because we
Totally.
talk about it's not just about deprivation, it's about
Mhm.
finding what works for you. What did that look like in your journey?
Well, something that I found out after the fact, years later, is that what I was spending was actually almost exactly what the average was. Your average woman spends, as of 2017, around $300 per month on beauty and personal care. So I do think it's important to start there because it helps us kind of set the stakes. Obviously, listeners of this show will be familiar with the idea of opportunity cost. And if you're spending money on something, that means you can't be investing it. So if you were to take over a 40-year career, the average monthly beauty spending of around $300, and you were to invest that instead, you're going to retire with an extra $1 million. Now, that is not a cost at the margin. We're not talking about the latte. This is a retirement supporting amount of money. And so I think it's important to get clear on the idea that we have become so comfortable and so adept at discussing beauty standards as psychologically oppressive forces in our lives, but we often don't think about them as economically oppressive forces. So when we talk about, oh, it feels vulnerable or it feels risky to disengage or to divest from these systems, that's because you probably receive signals every single time that you leave your house that the way that you look matters. We know that people who are above average, quote unquote, attractiveness, and that's how they dictate it in the studies. There's very bleak study methodology that I write about in the book where they basically line up 5,000 women and they go above average, average, below average attractiveness, and then they track their grades in in-person classes over time. So we know that attractive people tend to have easier lives. Beauty is a real form of capital. It's social capital. We know that. So that's not to say that if it feels risky or vulnerable that it's all in your head. But the problem with investing in beauty as capital is that unlike real capital, it is a depreciating asset. It's an asset that is going to require more and more cash flow as you age to kind of preserve the same benefits. It's a master that will never be satisfied. So I think about that and I go, that is not a good ROI. And I am not interested in things that don't offer me a good ROI. Now, am I going to get something for looking a little bit nicer? Sure. But what I found when I talked to readers about the Hot Girl Hamster Wheel, because this is something that I've been writing about for a long time, I hear interesting things. Some women who were formerly very high maintenance, maybe even more so than I was, and I was very high maintenance, don't get me wrong, what they'll tell me is not only did I get all this money back, but I noticed that my life actually didn't really change. I still got promoted at work. My partner still loves me. The things that I feared really didn't come to pass. Or they'll tell me, yeah, I'm not coloring my hair anymore, right? Like I let it go gray. And I actually feel more powerful now because I know that in that decision, not only am I prioritizing something about my future that is a little bit more substantial than like how I look in the moment, but I'm also no longer contributing to a system that is bad for other women. And I think that's the really important thing when we talk about beauty standards that often gets swept under the rug or kind of out of the way, which is that yes, they are individual choices. Yes, these things are up to you, what you want to participate in, what you want to abstain from. But the way that beauty standards and beauty norms work is that the more people that try to embody them, the more expected they become. There's a really great culture critic named Jessica DeFino who writes about this. And she basically says, when we all strive to uphold these beauty standards, then that becomes the baseline for what is expected for women to treat them with basic human dignity. So I will hear from women who say, I'm not coloring my hair anymore. I stopped getting Botox. Yeah, it's saving me money, but I also now know that when I walk down the street and another woman looks at me, she's not going to go now feel like she needs to start coloring her hair or she needs to go get Botox. So I really look at this topic as the intersection where individual choice and basically collective action kind of overlap in an interesting way. And that's why I start the book talking about this, because I think it's a really underappreciated and underdiscussed element of women and their financial futures.
Yeah.
There's so much permission giving happening here that is really empowering. I remember seeing Chloe Daniels from
Mhm.
Bear, and she posted recently, although that could have been a month ago at this point, about how she stopped getting her eyelashes done. And it was interesting because
Yes.
for me, on my side of things, and maybe some of our listeners too, we are accustomed to going without. And
Mhm.
now that maybe we've understood money more and
Mhm.
how we can earn more, that then we are faced with, what do I do with my money?
Yeah.
And this is what society is telling us to do. This is what maybe other women subconsciously or consciously are telling us to do. That I have had the thought in the past, if I could finally afford it, I might get my lashes done. I might get my eyebrows done. I might be able to go get waxed every other month.
Mhm.
And then to realize and hear from some of these people who have been there, done that, saying,
Yeah.
actually, I stopped doing that. And I like how my eyes look more. And I like the freedom that I'm experiencing by not doing this anymore. I think it works on both ways to help people detox from the things that they're already doing, but also inform those who might be earning more. You don't have to get onto that rat
Yeah.
race
Yeah. And
either.
there's this sense of like, not everyone knows what these beauty procedures are.
Mhm.
So, like, if you're looking with someone like super full lashes and you don't know that they get their lashes done, and then you just feel insecure.
Mhm.
And then there's no solution for you, even if you try. So then maybe you're not going to spend money on beauty, but then you're going to spend money on something else because you have this self like deprecating like feeling all the time. And
Mhm.
all
Mhm.
the marketing across the board is marketing to our insecurities. So it doesn't
Yes.
matter if it's like insecurity in features, and maybe you're not even going to spend there. Maybe you're going to spend somewhere else. So, like, if I can't be beautiful, then I'll be smart. And then you're
Mm.
going to spend money somewhere else, or I'm going to go out and spend money on, happy hours and stuff. So,
Make people like me.
yeah, it doesn't stop even if you don't consider yourself to be someone who highly values aesthetics.
I think the eyelash thing is just a really important example that I want to double down on for a second, because one of the more insidious elements of the hamster wheel is not just that you have to keep spending to uphold appearances, but that oftentimes there is like a coercive force underlying stopping. Where I used to have fake eyelashes, and let me tell you, when those things come off, when you stop getting the little things adhered to your face, your regular eyelashes, your natural eyelashes look terrible because they get brittle and broken down. Anybody who's ever gotten acrylic nails knows this game. You get acrylic nails, they look amazing for like 2 weeks, and then they grow out and you have to get them taken off. And the nails underneath, your natural nails that before were probably perfectly suitable and beautiful, are now yellowing and brittle and scratched, right? So oftentimes these procedures and these services have a tendency to leave you, quote, worse off than you even were when you started.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really does function in many ways like a trap. And so that's why I think it's not that you should disengage with all of it. There very well may be things that you look at that realistically and you go, yes, and I can still afford and still want to do this one particular thing. But knowing the stakes of like, okay, well, what is really going to be the consequences of this, both financially and then like upkeep wise, that I think is something worth going into with eyes wide open.
Yeah. And so much of like female aesthetics was like inherently designed to distract women
Yeah.
away from other things. And like you talk about this in your book, how like one of the book's central themes is that the financial system wasn't built with women in mind. So like what are some of the hidden rules or assumptions baked into this system that more women should be aware of?
Yeah. So at a high level, I think that personal finance and investment best practices will probably be, generally speaking, the same for everybody. However, the system that we existed now was largely shaped in subtle and overt ways by men's experiences, men's preferences, men's priorities. And so the reality is that women do statistically face different financial challenges than men do. So we've already talked at length about the beauty and personal care consumer industries. These are industries that exist almost solely to invent insecurities and then market ways to fix them to one half of the population. You also have to consider the fact that women now negotiate just as often as men do, but they are now 15% less likely to get a raise when they ask for more money. And this is in part because a lot of negotiation advice focuses on teaching women to be aggressive, demand your worth, ask for what you're worth. Well, that doesn't really work for women the same way it works for men, because when women are seen as pursuing quote unquote masculine goods, power, money, status, these zero sum ideas that are considered to be inherently belonging to men and therefore like could never rightfully belong to a woman, they are more likely to face pushback. So something that I always like to note here too, though, is that this road does go both ways, that when men pursue flexibility or other things that are kind of deemed as like feminine values, they will also face more pushback. So really we're all trapped in like the prison that is the gender binary, but for women it results in fewer resources. So over time, we see the reality of the gender wage gap worsen for women. This is true because when women become parents, when they become mothers, they are likely to kind of downshift at work. They're more likely to downshift at work than a male partner or parent would be. And this is true, by the way, for like families where like the man would like to be more involved or the man would like to be the one downshifting. Often the economics of the household are such that that really doesn't make sense. So you have these systemic forces that are kind of in a, I don't know, not necessarily malevolent, and you could even say it's in a benign way, or kind of keeping these structures and these norms in place. So it is true that women spend less time doing paid labor than men do, but it's because they're spending on average roughly twice as much time doing unpaid labor. So I really like the work of Nobel Prize winning economist Claudia Golden. She found that this reality is the primary driver of the gender wage gap, this gap between paid and unpaid labor time effectively. And so if you look at somebody's entire lifetime and you compound those disparities, and then you consider the fact that women are just going to, frankly, live longer. They have average lifespans that are 6.5% longer. Well, statistically now, they're going to be the ones who are going to bear the brunt of any poor long-term financial planning. So we look at all these obstacles, we study them longitudinally over the lifetime, and then you can see in the data, these discrepancies compound and women retire with about 57% as much money as men do. So a big part of my work is looking at those realities, looking at that data head on and going, okay, we know, if we're being intellectually honest, that we're not going to fix these things in our own lives by just like, quote unquote, making different choices. Countries that are serious about fixing these problems address them with policy. But in the meantime, we are not without agency. And there are things that we can do, whether that's negotiating in a way that navigates gender bias successfully, whether that's saving for childcare before you have a baby, and getting really serious about having an egalitarian partnership, and really ingesting the knowledge that you need to be in the driver's seat of your financial life, that all of these things really can make a difference. They do make a difference. So I try to marry those two realities in my work.
Yeah, you're so right. Because my husband would love to be a stay-at-home dad, but the nature of his work is so much more stable than mine that
Mhm.
that I am the parent that is doing drop-off and pickup, and he would love to be doing that. But like
Yep,
it's the risk we can't like afford to take. Uh,
exactly.
so yeah, that's absolutely, and having a partnership where both people are investing in each other's retirement like
Mhm.
equally is so important. And knowing like even if you're the one making money and I'm the one staying home with the kids, you can't work without me staying home with the kids, or
Right.
you will be putting this money into childcare if I am not here. So valuing each other's work equally.
Speaking of gender biases, gender norms, I think one of the things that stands out to me the most in this topic of salary and making money and finances is specifically salary negotiations. And you've already touched on this a bit, and I'm curious to dig in a little more on how it can look different. And I've even experienced this where if I try to implement the strategies of a bro with a podcast with 100 downloads, which I do want to bring
That's
that
the
energy to the
that's the
table.
energy. That's our
TBH.
2025
Yeah.
energy that we are bringing everywhere.
A white man with 100 downloads has all the confidence in
Oh
the
my gosh,
world.
I've never been more successful than when I have brought that energy to the table.
Okay, but truly, when it comes to asking for more, advocating for oneself, entering
Mhm.
into negotiations, it is becoming apparent that our strategies do need to be a little different, for better or worse. What have you found? How can you guide us?
So I really love the work of this woman named Catherine Valentine.
Who
Not
we
sure.
have had on the show. We
Okay,
Mhm.
will link
great.
that episode.
I'm glad that you have. So some of this might sound familiar, but I do want to share one of the biggest negotiating tips that she shared with me that I find to be extremely relevant, even beyond the scope of just the very direct ask of more money. And it's to stop talking. Women are socialized to put other people at ease, to make other people feel comfortable, right? So if you're asking somebody for more money, or you're really making any sort of ask of them, that's kind of uncomfortable, kind of inherently uncomfortable. And so often what they'll find in this research about gender bias and negotiation is that women will make the ask and then they will immediately begin negotiating against themselves and offering all the reasons why they totally understand if it's not doable right now. And I know the budgets are tight. So, like, if it's not this time, then maybe you've probably heard this, seen this, and maybe even done this yourself. I know that I have. So, the advice is once you make the ask, and in the book, I outline the specific ways to like structure that ask for the best results, stop talking and allow the uncomfortable silence. The other really critical thing to remember that I have found very useful in my own work and in my time in corporate settings is that workplaces are a little bit like glorified high school lunchrooms. And so, in many ways, perception is reality. So, the best time to begin setting the groundwork for a negotiation is long before you are actually sitting down to have that conversation. There are a couple components of how you approach this. I generally bucket them into two main categories. The first is your perceived value in the company, and the second is your market rate. So, aside from upskilling, you have a lot less control over your market rate than you do your perceived value. So there are a couple little tricks that I like to use for really disproportionately shaping that perceived value. Women are extremely hard workers by and large. That is a generalization I'm very comfortable making. So my advice is, these are not ways to work harder, these are ways to work smarter. So the first is socializing your wins. Oftentimes, popular negotiation advice will encourage you to keep a list of your accomplishments, and that is great. But it's actually way better if people know about those accomplishments as they are happening. So this is kind of an art and a science. There was one gal that I worked with at Southwest Airlines back in the day. She got promoted pretty much every time there was a promotion cycle. So I really studied her and what she was doing differently. And she was excellent at this. She would communicate her team's wins and the initiatives that she was driving for them as part of like, oh, just sharing out learnings that others might find useful from this, user experience testing session that we were working on. Let me know if you'd like to talk more. I'm attaching a deck of findings, So you're really, it's a slippery slope because you don't want it to be a bragging montage. But the bottom line is that if you are doing impressive things, people need to know about it. The next is going the extra yard. So note, we're not talking about the extra mile, just a yard. If your deadline for 3 factors that are impacting conversion is due on Friday, you're going to hand it over on Thursday and you're going to throw in a 4th. If you are meeting with someone, particularly somebody who is above you in the organization, you're going to send an agenda ahead of time and you're going to manage up. I think that this is especially important if you are bringing an issue to a manager, because if you're setting up a meeting with somebody like a manager or a supervisor and you are bringing an issue to them, you're dropping a problem in their lap, that's no good. It's a little bit better to come with an explanation, like here's my issue and here's what I think is causing it. But what's even better than that is coming prepared with a few potential solutions and ideally which solution you recommend. And if you have the latitude to do this, oh, by the way, I've already implemented my recommended solution. I'm just keeping you in the loop now. So that is something that I think goes a really, really long way, particularly as you kind of get stuck in that quote unquote middle management, oh my gosh, morass with executing at a level that will allow the people that probably have a say over whether you are going to ascend higher, giving them the impression that you are there to make their lives easier effectively and that you are autonomous in your job. I think that goes a really, really long way. So my approach to negotiation, as you've probably gathered, is yes, specific. Yes, we're going to talk about the semantics. Yes, we're going to talk about how to structure your asking your argument, but we should also widen the aperture and talk about how you're actually approaching the job so that when you sit down to have that conversation, it's just smooth sailing.
Yes. Sharing your wins strategically like that is white man with 100 download energy. That is what we mean. Because they have, we see them sharing these things and we're like, to me, it's not impressive because I've like done that so long ago. But to other people who you need to impress, they don't know that. And they see that person sharing that success and that knowledge that comes with it, but they don't see you sharing it. So they don't know you have it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it can feel braggadocious or whatever you want to say about it, especially for women. But I do like the blanketing it in also a way to help other people as well, which is,
that's something
for
that
better
we
or
already
worse.
expect from women to do. We expect women to act relationally. We expect women to think communally, to be helpful. So the more you can, I don't know, man, play into that trope. And now trust me, I'm the first person to be like, let's break the glass fourth wall for a second. That's so annoying that we have to think this way. But this is the world we live in. And if you want to be recognized for the good work that you're doing, these are some ways to make sure that happens.
Yeah. And there is a balance between fighting against the system and playing to your advantages within the system. And you don't have to choose one or the other. You can do both. And I love that you do that. Last question is that you make a strong case for women claiming unapologetic financial autonomy. So for someone just waking up to how uneven the playing field is, what's the very first mindset shift or action you'd recommend?
Oh, the first mindset shift or action.
Unless you want to jump to step 10, but
No, I think that that's a good question, because I think that it's a step that every single person is going to have to confront. And before I answer it, I just want to tell you a little bit more about why unapologetic financial autonomy is where I landed. And it was some of the research that I found that bolstered chapter 3, which is called Knowledge is Power. It's research from a bank called UBS, and every year they do something called the Own Your Worth report. And what they find consistently is that even high earning millennial women, so we're talking young women, and we're talking women that are making a lot of money, in many cases are the breadwinners in their relationships. They are the primary financial providers in their homes, still have a tendency to outsource their financial decision making to male partners. Something like 70% of men in these surveys will claim, I am the financial decision maker in this home. And there are a lot of reasons for this. I mean, a popular reason for this, to be honest, if we want to link this back to systemic forces, is that women today, even modern high income women, are very overburdened in their homes. To link it back to the time use study data, right? We know that women are within familial relationships probably spinning a lot more plates, just on average. Now, if someone in your relationship is saying, don't worry, babe, I got it, I'll take care of the money, they're offering to take something off your plate, and maybe it's something that you don't feel very confident about anyway, you're like, great, yeah, one less thing that I have to worry about. So it makes perfect sense why we've gotten here. But what jumped out to me in this research is that a lot of women, what they say when asked, why do you do this, is something to the effect of, well, financial decision making is just, quote, less natural for me. And that phrase jumped out at me immediately, because I was like, natural? Well, nothing about managing money and thriving under capitalism is natural. I mean, everyone has to learn how to do that. No one comes out of the womb knowing how to balance a checkbook or diversify a portfolio. So I thought, okay, that's a really good insight. The idea that we feel as though this is something that should come naturally to us is something that we can affect right now. And that's why I called it Knowledge is Power, chapter 3, where we really get into some of the granularities around how to plan long term for your finances. But that's why I really wanted to lean into this idea that we need to be unapologetic about this. We need to recognize that this is something that not only are we capable of doing, but we really ought to be doing it. We are the best people to be making these decisions about our future. No one is going to care more about it than we do, even our spouses who we may love very much. 84% of widows in America are women, which means even women who are married to wonderful male partners who never get divorced will still need to know how to manage their money on their own. So I think getting out of the mentality that any of this should be coming naturally to you is probably the mindset shift that I would say somebody should start with.
Which is, it's crazy because as a high performing woman, I think a lot of things do come naturally to us. So like, it's just, you catch on to more things more quickly. Right. And so I don't know if there's like a disconnect. Obviously, like us being in personal finance, like that's just something that we live in and comes, more quickly. But I wonder if that's part of it. It's that more things they do pick up more quickly and just haven't gone into the money part.
Yeah, I think it probably comes down to interest too, because I mean, I don't know that it's true that money came naturally or easily to me, or if it was just that I was so interested in it that learning about it felt easy. And that might have been your experience too, where you were just so enthralled with the topic that like studying it was fun.
Yeah.
But if I needed to know physics to manage my life and future, I can promise you I would be like, hey, anyone else in my immediate circle want to handle this for me? Because I could learn it, but I'm not interested in learning it. So it might be a matter of interest as well, but I really think that the majority of women, particularly the type of women that are being interviewed in surveys like these, they have done and mastered far more complex topics than personal finance, as the two of you probably know. Like, we're not talking about rocket science here. A lot of this stuff is pretty manageable once you like pull back the curtain or lift up the hood. So that's probably where I would start.
Yeah.
You know what I'm always interested in, and actually it does come quite naturally to me.
It has truly come probably most natural in anything that we've done in podcasting.
The bill of the week.
Katie, every week we yell at our listeners and our guests to share with us their bill of the week, and we leave it as vague as possible to give you the freedom to be unapologetically autonomous in your answer.
Cool. Okay, my bill of the week. I'm gonna go the business owner route here. I just invested, and I paid part of the invoice, which is why it's my bill of the week this week, around $15,000 in getting a custom site made. And this is the biggest investment I've ever made personally in the business. So I'm excited about it. It's a lot of money. I hope it pays off, but we're living through the risk reward cycle as we speak.
Your branding upgrade is flawless.
Oh, thank you so
my
much.
favorite branding. At least in personal finance, but like really in a lot of other places too.
Oh, I will pass that very kind compliment along to the designers. Thank you.
It's so good.
Oh, business decisions. We were having a conversation ourselves about where to invest money because there are so many options and everybody wants your money, and figuring out what is going to be the best thing now and long term. What's the opportunity cost here? It is no small thing. And it is a little bit different than maybe some of the ways that we would approach our own personal finances and the choices that we would make. So yeah, we can appreciate that. We feel that so deeply.
Yeah.
Well done for making this decision. And we are hopeful with you that it turns out well. Yeah.
I know. I'm like, come back to moneywithkatie.com in August, and hopefully you'll be greeted by a much, much improved experience.
Fun.
If you all listening have a bill that you want to share, if it's about just a full send on a business investment or a bill that you didn't have to pay or your name is Bill, visit frugalfriendspodcast.com/bill. Leave it for us. We cannot wait. And now it's time for the lightning round.
All right. Let's get real vulnerable right now. What's a recent life experience that made you feel like a rich girl?
Oh man, a recent life experience that made me feel like a rich girl. Well, so for my book promotional tour, I'm doing a talk at 92nd Street Y in New York, which is, I learned, I didn't know this because I'm not from there, but is apparently like a really, really good venue for that sort of thing. And I did kind of have a moment of like, oh wow, I've made it. Like I'm talking about my new book at this, prestigious New York venue, and I am a kind of normal person from northern Kentucky who had never really set foot in a real city until she was an adult. So I definitely had a moment of, wow, I've really come a long way.
Yeah, that is so cool.
That's
Congratulations.
Awesome.
What about for you, Jen?
Oh, so I don't know if it made me feel like a rich girl, but last week we got invited to be on a news segment. And when we get there, like they reached out to us, and when we get there, we're like, so how did you find us? And the anchor, she's like, my daughter is a huge fan.
Aww.
And I was like, dang.
That's always so fun.
Yeah. So she was like begging me to get you guys on. So that was very gratifying.
Yeah, that is cool. And I got to share in that too. So I won't steal that one.
I'm sorry if that was going to be yours.
No, that's fine. For me, I have been really enjoying figuring out, we have been giving ourselves permission year over year to earn more. and recognizing the responsibility that we have to be able to manage money well and not approach it from a scarcity or deprivation mindset. And so that has been happening. And then to have more to be able to make decisions with. And so one of the decisions that I made recently was to pay my friend who is starting her own business to pull together a personalized style. She's gotten into style theory and kind of did this whole testing quizzes, measurements on me, and is creating a whole style guide for me to feel much more confident in the clothing that I wear, as I also aim at having a minimalist wardrobe that I am able to purchase secondhand. So it feels so values aligned, but also, extra, like it's not bare minimum and it's giving to a friend. And I just feel like a rich girl.
Yeah. When we got our colors done, that was
fun too.
like, have you heard of like getting your wardrobe colors done?
I've heard of it. I've never done it. What were yours?
I'm an autumn.
I'm a summer.
So that has been super helpful in understanding, why am I holding on to these things in my closet, but I never wear them? And it's like, oh, because the color doesn't look really good. Or why do I not have any of this color in my closet? Oh, because I keep looking at this shade when really this is the shade that looks best on me. So that was really eye-opening for us for me to, and then now I can thrift more easily. Like I just stay away from certain colors and yeah.
Oh, so there's your sales pitch. Katie, everyone already knows about you, but in case they're not fully aware, where can they get more from you?
Well, if you like podcasts, check out the Money with Katie show. If you like to read like longer form essays, I send those out nearly every week on the Money with Katie newsletter, which you can find at the imminently remodeled moneywithkatie.com. And then on Instagram, you can find me at Money with Katie. And of course, if you are interested, you can pick up my new book, Rich Girl Nation.
Excellent. Thanks so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
That was a dream come true, because I don't fan out over many of our guests. Usually I don't know who they are when they come on the show.
Sorry if you've ever been on the show.
And then we became friends, and that's great. That's the best way. Organic, authentic. Katie, however, I follow. Never thought that we'd be able to wrangle her in for our podcast, but she was so kind and willing, and that was very fun for us. And I loved her concept of the hot girl hamster wheel, honestly. Anytime we can like reframe a situation and look at it from a new angle, it's very fun for me. And anytime we can push back on well-established ideas and kind of say, what about if we're a little subversive here? And are we sure that that's actually where we're spending the most money? And are we sure that we really need to cut our rent if we've already slashed it so far? There might be other areas that we need to be looking at.
Yeah, questioning the traditional norms, because and personal finance is so different now than it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. It always behooves us to be questioning what was right then, if it's still right now. 9 times out of 10, it will still be like good advice then is still good advice now, but there's always something that can be improved upon or changed. So I love that I can go to Katie's content to rethink some of the things that I have thought of as normal.
So true. Well, thank you all so much for listening, for watching. If you are on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps us.
If you're not on YouTube, head over to Frugal Friends on YouTube and also hit the subscribe button, please.
We really love your listening and your watching, and we also love your reading, because many of you have read our book, Buy What You Love Without Going Broke, that we wrote and published earlier this year. And we've been loving to read some of those kind reviews, like this one from Michelle Pavlovich, 5 stars. This book was entertaining and easy to digest. I've been a Frugal Friends podcast listener for years now, and I still learned new concepts with this book. Jen and Jill offer tangible tips and a call to action at the end of every chapter. That was important to us. I'm so glad we did that. I love their simple approach to managing spending and building a life that aligns with your values while still offering grace for our humanity. An easy read, and I'll be revisiting on a regular basis. Thank you, Michelle, so much. We're so glad that those action steps and questions at the end of every chapter was super useful for you.
Yeah, if you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to leave a rating and review. It helps potential new listeners and watchers know what the show is all about. And if you've read the book, please take a minute to leave a review wherever you've gotten it. And yeah, if you haven't, buywhatyoulovebook.com. Head over there.
See you next time.